It's really a joy and an honor to be here with Linda and Jack. And thank you, Jack, for that setting the ground of the historical Kabir, because I'm going to move straight into cutting 600 years later to see what became of the words that the historical Kabir would have spoken, or we guess he would have spoken, or we study and research what did he say and who was really Kabir. So I'm going to try and squarely answer that question: who was Kabir, from the vantage point of the practitioners of the oral tradition that keep Kabir's poetry alive as songs in our country. And as we know, over 600 years, Kabir's words have morphed, have evolved, have transformed, have poured themselves into multiple dialects and languages of the entire, mid-western, eastern, western stretch, going all the way to Pakistan on one side and to Nepal in the north and to Bengal in the east. So his expressions keep shifting language flavors, dialects, and also pouring themselves into newer metaphors with the passage of time. So we have so many Kabir songs that have metaphors of things that seem anachronistic because they didn't exist back then, like trains or telescopes even. So what we are talking about is a kind of a vast body of living, thriving, pulsating, constantly evolving, constantly being added to body of verse, which in a sense one could say belongs in the commons, because people participate in it with a sense of ownership. So who is Kabir? If we try and answer that question from that vantage point, that's what I'll try and share here. And for that, I'll take you back to my research days in Malwa, in a village called Barandwa, where I was once sitting with a wonderful folk singer, Narayan Singh Delmia. With us was Dinesh, who was a social worker of a local NGO called Eklavya. And Dinesh happened to say, I am very confused because there are so many songs of the Kabir tradition which speak of Guru with such scorn and critique, and on the other hand, the same tradition speaks of Guru with such reverence. So we really need to undertake some serious research to find out what was the authentic voice of Kabir here. What was Kabir really saying about the Guru? So Narayanji, I remember, smiled. In fact, he started laughing and he said, ऐसे नहीं पता चलेगा तुम्हें authenticity का मामला. You're not going to figure out the authentic word of Kabir through that route, through the route of research and analysis and period analysis and all of that. And then he said, आप खुद शब्द पे चलिए, दूध का दूध और पानी का पानी हो जाएगा. Walk the talk, walk what the Shabd says, and it will sift itself, it will become clear to you. So this is a validation not so much of the authenticity of the poem, rather the relevance of it for your life. This speaks of a knowledge tradition where there is a resolute subjectivity that seeks no external yardsticks for validation of the authenticity of a poem or an experience. So evidently in the oral traditions, I feel what people seek is not so much the authentic word of a historical figure, Kabir, or even the words of the Guru, as the Sikh community has consecrated the words of Kabir in the Guru Granth Sahib. And they treat those words with deep reverence as the Bani, as the word of the Guru, not to be messed with, cannot be changed with, tampered with, not a matra here or there. The oral traditions are not seeking this authentic word. Rather, they are seeking self-revelation. through participation. They're seeking the validation of the truth of the poem in their hearts. And another incident that I love to quote to, demonstrate this quality of the oral traditions in its best practice is a moment when I was in a car. It was past midnight. Prahlad Tipania ji, who's this very well-known folk singer of Kabir, whom I have done a lot of research with, learned a lot of Kabir from. He was returning from a late night concert in some remote village. And with us in the car was a younger singer, Arun Goel. And the conversation started about a particular song which says, Jajo, Jajo re ina samundara par, motira lajo anabindya. Go, my friend, go across the seas, bring back a pearl that is anabindya, meaning unpierced, unstrung. And interestingly, Arun Goel sings the same song saying, Motira lajo anabhinjya. Anabhinjya meaning unsaturated, untouched by the waters of the ocean. And a pretty long conversation, a discussion unfolded in that car ride between these two singers, the carriers of the oral tradition of Kabir, where they debated what would be the authentic word that Kabir would have used here, Anbindya or Anbhinjya. And let me just cut to the chase and say that after a long discussion, they mutually agreed that both words were accurate to the philosophy of Kabir, and that both should therefore be sung, because Anbindya signals bringing back a pearl that stands alone, that is not compromised by being strung into a narrow framework of any kind. And Anabhinjya signals that quality of a seeker or seeking that belongs in the world, is in the bhavsagar of the world, but untouched by it, not wet. So I think this example really brought home to me in great clarity both the, what should I say, the vulnerability of the oral tradition to appropriation, to distortions, and at the same time, its strength and beauty. Strength because this is how people unlock the tradition for themselves from the ground of practice. And I think I might dare to even say it is truer to the spirit of Kabir to not search for the authentic Kabir, but to search for the spirit of Kabir in your own heart. And actually, I came across this wonderful image for the oral traditions listening the other day to a scholar, Milind Vakankar, and he said that the oral tradition is a bit like, the bank locker. In India, I don't know if this is true of the United States, but in India, when you put all your jewels away in a bank locker, it's always operated with a double key, okay? There is a master key, which the bank official has, that's Kabir. And you need your own key, and the two keys come together to unlock the treasures of this tradition for you. So we know that so many songs of the Kabir tradition have signatures of Kabir. Many contemporary songs are written with the signature of Kabir, but then we also have a lot of songs which have these double signatures. Kahe Dharam Das, paying a tribute to Kabir. So there are these two names that come up at the end of the song, which signal a tribute to that historical figure who passed, but a confident and assured claim to being an owner of the tradition, the oral tradition of Kabir, and participating in it. I'd like to also speak about a moment in Banaras. In fact, Linda, if you remember, we were in, I think, 2004 in Banaras shooting with you, and we did an interview with your collaborator, Dr. Shukdev Singh. And I remember he said something in that interview which really struck a chord, or rather I should say it really intrigued me. He said, कबीर समझने की चीज है जरूर, लेकिन उससे कहीं ज्यादा कबीर गुणने की चीज है. And I wasn't quite sure what he meant. Kabir, he's saying, a quick translation would be that Kabir is certainly a poet to be understood, but more than that, he must be hummed. Gunna brings in the idea of sound, of humming, of being drawn into sound or orality. And orality is certainly in the DNA of the Kabir tradition, or Kabir himself, for Kabir is constantly inviting us to listen all the time. Kahe Kabir, suno bhai sadho. Listen to what? To his poems, to his words, certainly, but then also to the Shabd, the word with capital W that is a difficult idea to translate. It signals a word, it signals a sound, it signals the primordial sound from which all of creation is spun, as the tradition speaks of it. It signals perhaps the substance of reality itself, moving beyond the dimension of sound, even. In any case, it signals a vast universe of seeking and experience. So I'm not going to try and dare to, in a quick, shallow way, define what Shabd means. But I think it's also interesting that Shabd, in addition to signaling sound or primordial sound, also means poem, Shabad, literally the spoken word, an utterance, an oral poem, a devotional song, or Bani, Shabad Kirtan, that's where the term comes from. So today, what I thought I would try and do is inquire into the meanings of Shabd, both as that original sound, that ultimate reality, and as poem song in the context of the satsang in the oral traditions, and see where that takes us, what insights emerge. And why Shabd ki door? Door, tar, being a thread, a string, a chord. For that, I'd like to share a doha with you, a sakhi, which I heard Prahaladji sing once, which really struck me. Makdi utri tar se, tar tar chadhi jaye, sant utre shabad se, ve shabad shabad chadhi jaye. Now, I found this image of the spider and a thread very striking, rich with possibilities when juxtaposed with the idea of a seeker and the word. For it signals a movement on the thread of something delicate, something very fragile. Our attention, perhaps, to that which interconnects, weaves a web, something so subtle that it can almost be missed like a spider's web in the background till we bring our attention to it, our surta. Shabd as a subtle presence permeating the entire fabric of our existence and reality, unnoticed till we become aware of it, till we tune in, we listen. So, and this poem speaks of utarna, utre shabd se, coming from somewhere, from some origin. But it also speaks of chadhana, which is a much more frequent term in Kabir poetry, of climbing, an upward movement. Many Kabir songs will signal that the Shabd can be heard in the sky, in the gagan, that it is a sound very subtle that is resonating in the sky. In some other bhajans, he will say, Surat dor akash chadhe. My attention climbs on the thread, on a thread to the sky. And we know that the sky he's referring to is both out there and in here. The sky is in the body. In yogic references, it is the inner space inside our skull domes. So sky is a metaphor for a state, an experience of ourself without borders. So I'd like to share a clip from our web Dunya Ajab Sheher of Prahaladji singing this iconic song of Kabir. So I'm going to share screen here. Hearing this Shabd is certainly an allusion to the experience of meditation, one would imagine. But I'd like to venture to say that to an extent, that is also what the satsang, in the best practice of that tradition, seeks to achieve. When groups of singers and listeners come together and imbibe the song in their bodies, singing, clapping, dancing, playing manjiras, feeling a sense of interconnection, becoming one with the sound, feeling it vibrate simultaneously in many bodies. Many boundaries and borders are dissolving in that moment between singers and listeners, between singer and song, sometimes between communities and castes, though not always, certainly flirting with that place of dismantling notions of self and other, intuiting some dissolution of separation between self and God, if one wants to use a term like that. And that is why satsangis will seek this space again and again, repeatedly. Because as our surta, our attention climbs to the sky, we experience the relief of a shedding of the burden of identities, of markers, of locativeness. So this is why a poem as song bears endless repetition. In satsang after satsang, year after year, decade after decade, we return to singing the same song. And what is being refreshed here is not so much an intellectual reminder of the meaning of the poem, the samajna, but the experience of enacting the poem as song, gunana. And what that experience induces in the singer listener, a movement from Shabd, lowercase s, lowercase w word, to Shabd, capital W word. From a movement from poem to sound, from sound maybe to silence, to the space between the words, from kat to akat, from sagun to nirgun, from self to non-self, in a sense. So a couple of more poems around this idea of Shabd. शब्द कहाँ से उठता और कहो कहाँ को जाए, हाथ पाँव वाके नहीं फिर कैसे पकड़ा जाए. From where does the word arise? Tell me, where does it go? It has no hands or feet. How will you catch its flow? तो नाभि कमल से उठता और शून्य में जाए समाए, हाथ पाँव वाके नहीं वो सूरत से पकड़ा जाए. Arising from the navel lotus, it goes into emptiness. It has no hands or feet. It's caught by your awareness. सूरत समानी निरत में, अजपा में जाप, लेख समाना अलेख में, ज्यों आपा माही आप. Awareness merges with presence. The chant now chants itself. The manifest touches the unmanifest. The self returns to the self. So I'm going to play one more song for you because this is a beautiful song by Muralala Marwada ji. And I chose this song to share with you because it, in a sense, I feel describes the experience of the satsang, of the experience of the Shabd in the body. I wanted to share this song for the aforesaid reasons, but also interestingly, it is not a song by Kabir. And I think that too is important to signal and speak about, that the spirit of the truth that Kabir alludes to is confirmed, attested, established more firmly if you find it in many voices. In the Dead Poets Society that is this amazing Bhakti Andolan, there were so many voices there. So I think what the satsang engenders is a kind of rejoicing in multi-vocality. Poets being ascribed as signatures to the same song. Sometimes you hear, and Linda will attest to this fact, that we've heard songs in the field which will sometimes be shared as Gorakhnath bhajans, and somebody else will sing it with a signature of Kabir. Or even Meera and Kabir will get swapped as poets of the same song. Or these songs will set up conversations between poets, speaking to each other across time sometimes. The reason why the oral traditions are so relaxed about confusing these signatures is not a sloppiness or an inexactitude. This is a profound disregard as deliberate choice. I would argue that it is an integrative impulse. It is an inclusive impulse, which resonates deeply with the philosophy of the poetry itself, which is to find the one in the many and not be too worried about bhed. Lok bhed nahi karta. So the lens that seeks to separate and isolate to understand will be flummoxed. The lens that seeks purity and authenticity will be flummoxed. For the true meaning, the true point of it all gets engendered through integration, through a blurring of categories and boundaries. So at the risk of romanticizing the satsang, I will say that, because not all satsangs are so grand. But I do believe that this amazing satsang tradition that is the vehicle of the oral traditions of this land have this quality of being, which is quite radical actually, because what it induces in you through the experience of Shabd is an understanding of social equality or non-divisiveness, which may be an idea or a value we derive through the intellect and the heart. But here in the satsang, it gets reaffirmed in the experience of something in the body, a connection to the sky, the limitlessness, the all-inclusive oneness with no borders as embodied knowledge, as an experience that something you know through the body, a knowing that you continually refresh through the body. So I'm going to now really end with a song which speaks of this quality and brings together the idea of sky again. जात हमारी आत्मा, प्राण हमारा नाम, अलख हमारा इष्ट है, गगन हमारा गाम. My caste is my soul, this life breath, my name. My religion is the alak, unseen, and in the sky, my home. Anal akasa ghar kiya, madhya nirantar vas. Vasudha vyom birkat rahe, bina thor vishwas. In the sky, the phoenix makes a home, in between forever. Heaven and earth have no allure. Her faith in placelessness is raksha, bina thor vishwas. And the song that I will end with is a song from the Kutch oral tradition of Kabir, which says, Ari gagan ma jyot jalant hai, enu akhand bhayo ujvalo, gagan ma. Mharo pirbu rame chhe niradharo, gagan ma. Ram rame chhe rangaro, gagan ma. Hey, Ari gagan ma jyot jalant hai. Nenu yakhan bhayo ujje bhalo gagan. Gagan hare Ram Rame Rangaro Haro pir bhura me chandira dharo gagan gagan hare Ram Rame Rangaro Hey, Ari gagan ma baja baje ho. Hey, Ari gagan ma baja baje ho. Enu jinu jinu ya ghada karo gagan gagan hare Ram Rame Rangaro धारो फिर भूंगा में छेदीरा धारो गगन मारे राम रामे रंगारो हे गुरुमुखा गिनियानी हो सतगुरु आगे हे गुरुमुखा गिनियानी हो सतगुरु आगे दिया मत जाए जामा खा फेरा रे गगन मारे राम रमे रंगारो मारो फिर भोरा में छेदीरा धारो गगन मारे राम रमे रंगारो है कहाँ तक कबीरा हो सुनो भाई साधो है कहाँ तक कबीरा हो सुनो मेरे साधो देवायन घड़िया तीरथ कोणे भार्या गगन मारे राम रमे रंगारो राम रमे रंगारो